Welcome back to Behind the Wardrobe. Today I will be covering a scene that marks the climax of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and is probably the most intense scene in the whole movie. And that scene is the battle. Be sure to check out my other videos if you haven't yet so you can see an analysis on other scenes. Now, let's get on to the video. Just like in my previous video, be aware that I will include spoilers for the movie, since this is towards the end of it. We've now gotten to the most intense point in the story, the climax. This battle is what puts an end to the White Witch's reign and allows the Pevensies to be crowned kings and queens of Narnia. Now, this scene has to be broken down into two different parts, since we have two important things happening at the same time: the battle against the witch and Aslan's resurrection and his explanation of the deep magic. In the book, we know that there's a battle after Aslan is killed, but we don't really see the start of it like in the movie. It stays with Lucy and Susan in Aslan's carcass. And then, after he resurrects, we go directly to the witch's castle, where Aslan unfreezes those that got turned to stone, but I will get to that later. Just like in my previous videos, I will once again use the formalism theory and the adaptation theory. As a small reminder, the formalism theory focuses on the sensory experience that a movie will give, as well as the aesthetics and how we interpret what we see. And the adaptation theory talks about how a narrative cannot be directly translated from one medium to another. It's more about how an artist interprets it and makes it more suitable for the new medium in which they want to tell it. From the beginning of the battle, we see formalism everywhere. We see the battlefield and the armies from both sides, Aslan's and the witches, letting us know that the fight is about to begin. The visuals, mixed with the soundtrack, which, by the way, I absolutely love. Big kudos to Harry Gregson Williams. Those two help the audience feel the determination to fight for Narnia and for Aslan.
For Narnia! And for Aslan!
Like I said, this whole sequence is not seen in the book, but in film it's necessary to visually show what our characters are going through. It helps to bring out that tension and excitement of watching the good and the bad fighting each other, and you root for the ones whose side you are on. This is where the adaptation theory comes in. In the book, the only part of the actual battle that we see is near the end of it, when Aslan arrives with Susan, Lucy, and the rest of his allies to help him fight. While in the movie, we see the battle begin, but then it cuts off and goes back to Lucy, Susan, and Aslan. We see them laying on a now dead Aslan, and once the sun begins to rise, a rumbling knocks them to the ground only for them to turn around and find out that the stone table is broken and Aslan is gone. But he steps back out with his mane fully grown back. He then explains the deep magic to them after they say that they watched him die.
But we saw the knife! The witch!
If the witch knew the true meaning of sacrifice, she might have interpreted the deep magic differently. That when a willing victim who has committed no treachery is killed in a traitor's stead, the stone table will crack, and even death itself would turn backwards.
Afterwards, they mention that Peter, Edmund, and the rest of Aslan's army are fighting. They set off to the witch's castle to save the victims that were turned to stone, and then they head to the battlefield. This whole sequence is a lot longer in the book. When Aslan resurrects, Susan and Lucy begin to play with him as if he was a cat. Lewis literally says that in the book. And it takes him a little while for them to mention going to help their allies in battle. And then Lewis describes their journey to the witch's castle, describing the feeling of riding on Aslan's back and the scenery that surrounded them. I quote, "Have you ever had a gallop on a horse? Think of that, and then take away the heavy noise of the hoofs and the jingle of the bits, and imagine instead the almost noiseless padding of the great paws." End quote. He then described the scenery with beech, oak, snow-white cherry trees, roaring waterfalls, and mossy rocks. The full description is longer, but you get the gist of it. This works in a book because we're not actually seeing what the characters see, so describing the scene helps us imagine it as we read. And the movie shows it visually without saying a single word about it. Then, when they get to the witch's castle, we first see Thomas turn to stone and the impact that it has on Lucy to see her friend like that. Shortly, we see Aslan breathing on him and unfreezing him to help the audience see what he does to bring them back. After seeing Lucy's reunion with Thomas and introducing him to Susan, we see that Aslan already unfroze several other creatures, letting us interpret that he did it in the meantime. And then he mentions that they must search the castle to get everyone that they can find. But we don't see the rest of that. We only assume that it will happen because it's mentioned. Again, that's formalism, letting us interpret what has been shown and said. This scene is also a lot longer in the book, showing how Aslan goes with every creature one by one, and then they all celebrate their return and head to battle. We have to remember that the adaptation theory is all about how an artist interprets a story to retell it in another medium. And Andrew's creative decision here was to get to the point quickly and then continue with the battle, since it was left on hold. And now we go back to our battlefield, where the witch sees Aslan and realizes her plan backfired. But right before this, we see a moment that was just narrated by the characters in the book, but it was made more dramatic in the film, which is when Edmund breaks the witch's wand and the witch stabs him with its remainders. Peter sees it all, and we see his fury to kill the witch after she hurt his brother. We don't even see this happen in the book, it's just mentioned by Peter right after the battle ends. Then, after Aslan kills the witch and the battle comes to an end,
It is finished.
we see Susan and Lucy reuniting with Peter and then going to assist Edmund, when Lucy uses her fire flower potion to heal him. And then Peter says,
When are you going to learn to do as you're told?
going back to this moment in the Blitz scene,
Why can't you just do as you're told?
demonstrating how Edmund's decision to not listen to Peter changed from selfish desires to selfless ones, as this time he was thinking about saving Peter from being turned to stone. Movie adaptations are far more complex than we initially realized, and the comments about disliking changes in a film that was adapted from a book are never missing. But by knowing the theories behind their creation, we can gain a better understanding of why these changes were made, and Narnia is not exempt from this. So what other change in the first Narnia movie do you think is worth analyzing? Are you more tempted to read the books now? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, bye!